Okay, hello everyone. I'm very excited for this lightning talk. We're going to be talking about Kubeflow Profiles automation, and I know that this is an issue that a lot of people who use Kubeflow encounter. Even the people at CERN that had the talk before, I know that they're talking about this. And basically, what we're suggesting is declarative user management at scale. Ooh, is this working?
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks. OK, so let me introduce myself. I'm Manos Vlassis. I'm a software engineer at Canonical. And I also had the privilege to be part of the release team for 1.10 as a liaison for the notebooks working group. So I really like the community, and I hope to continue contributing. And my colleague.
Hi, folks. I'm Kimonas Sotirchos. I'm a senior software engineer at Canonical, and I also used to be a director and work with a lot of great folks. And it's really, really amazing to keep on seeing the project on growing. And it hurts me that I'd like to be even more involved than I am right now. So really, really envy all those people that do. So, Mano?
Yeah. OK, so let's talk about the current status quo. You can move the slide, yeah?
Can you try one more time? I think it should work.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah. Thank you. OK, so we're always starting with the identity provider, and this defines what users should exist in the cluster. We have a single case where we want to map each profile to a single user. Here we have two options. The first one is a simple registration flow that is triggered in the central dashboard when Kubeflow detects that there isn't a namespace currently. Note that some companies do not actually want to do this because this is a self-serving process, so this means that this is done by users themselves. What some companies want to do is have the cluster administrator handle this, but currently this can be done by manually operating on YAML files to enable creation, deletion, and updating each profile. Kubeflow also introduces the concept of contributors, and this enables multiple users operating on a single profile. We can, again, here manage the contributors via the central dashboard, but note that this is a self-serving process as well. And some companies want to have an administrator handle this, and they can do this by operating manually on the YAML files. And now let's introduce the issues that we have here. The first one is that there are multiple sources of truth. This means that information about the users is located on the IDP side. Meanwhile, information about the profiles and the contributors are located in the cluster itself. Also, the issue is that in order to keep them continuously in sync, we have to do manual operations. And of course, we want them to be handled automatically. So the elevator pitch here, the proposition, is to have a single source of truth, and then have the state of the Kubernetes cluster continuously match that source of truth. Note that here, when talking about sources of truth, we mean profiles and contributors, and the state of the Kubernetes cluster refers to the profiles, the role bindings, and the Istio authorization policies. Here is a diagram of the idea we're presenting. Starting from the left to the right, we have the identity provider, which has information on users, roles, and groups, and this is mapped to profiles and contributors in the Kubeflow side. We have an IDP parser that continuously polls this information and creates a PMR, which is an abstract form of this information. This stands for profile managed representation. And we're using an operator which continuously tries to sync the information of the cluster with the PMR we have provided. So for all bindings, it does two steps. The first step is getting the current list of the contributors and deleting those that do not exist on the PMR, and then create a new PMR and create any new role bindings that didn't exist before, but they should. Note that the process is very similar for the authorization policies. And for profiles, it's very similar, but there is a small issue because deleting a profile that shouldn't exist would delete all resources in the namespace, and this is something that sometimes we do not want to have. For example, when having persistent volume claims that are not backed by something else. In this case, we're introducing the concept of a stale profile, which basically is a profile that should not exist on the cluster but currently exists. Users can get information about which profiles are currently stale, and they can possibly delete them if they want manually. This is done by an action, a Juju action, called delete stale profiles that administrators can use and delete all profiles that are considered stale. So this is the architecture that we have designed. And Kimonas will talk a little bit about a similar use case, which is about GitOps with profiles.
Let me try just to try in case now it will work.
Oh, right. Okay.
We got it.
Yeah.
So as Manos nicely showed, the very first pattern that we really want to cover is how to ensure we have a single source of truth so that administrators don't need to manipulate both users in the identity platform and as well the necessary resource in Kubernetes. But there's still an approach that kind of fits in this case, but users have been asking us for, which is still being able to have the source of truth for the profiles and what the contributors should be into GitHub because they want to handle it with GitOps. So whatever new users should be added, they should be parsed inside the central GitHub repository with having permissions on who can have access, etc. By the way, with this approach as well, it can fit to what Manos previously described by having some automation on the user side to just monitor the identity provider, and depending on how they want the mapping, ensure it is mapped into a GitHub repository. So this could also match this case, but it's also for users that would only want to have it on GitHub. So in this case, the way that it looks is instead of the information being on the identity platform, now it is on a GitHub repository, which we care about a YAML file, which will include information as what are the profiles, the resources, which are also part of the profile custom resource. And now we're also including inside the information about what are the contributors and what permission models should they be allowed to have. And we're having this exact same architecture in which our pod, which is essentially some Python code, will have the same logic for the operator handling. And now it is going to just monitor the GitHub repository. And whenever a new commit is going to be for a new file, it is going to pull this in and update the cluster on the same approach as Manos described earlier. We have made a lot of work on this to also we started with the work for the GitHub Profiles Automator. So if you have a GitHub repo, you can right now try it out, and you can deploy this component from one of those two links. Because we mentioned charms also for a second, you will need Juju to deploy this small part, but you can have it work with any kind of Kubernetes cluster. And the next goal that we're targeting is how to make it work with Entra ID, so the identity is described into Entra. But if someone is interested, we're super happy to work together on even more identity providers and set a common standard across this. So thank you very much.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Yes, I want to see this upstreamed as well, because I see many companies that have to build this from scratch, and instead they could just reuse it. I do it in a similar fashion myself. I would even go further and see how we can combine the profiles controller and the Kubeflow pipelines profile controller, and then hook in there somewhere to make this a plug-in system, more or less. So maybe they want to define the logic for namespaces themselves in Python or whatever. And yeah, I think we need to make it pluggable, because different companies will have different requirements.
Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you.
Now? Yeah. Fully agree. Some immediate thoughts that maybe we might not want to jump into the profile controller and have this functionality there. The plugin, though, is something that can give us extensibility, but for sure, the more that we can get this in a common place and hear more feedback, because also how to express this into the identity provider is something that everyone might have a little bit of their own opinion. So the more that we streamline from the bottom how we define to the end on how it should look, agree. And also for sure the discussion about the profiles controller on KFP, but does it slightly more orthogonal, so yeah, let's not go too much into that now.
Yeah, so my question was, thank you for the talk first, of course. So the integration with the IDP, you mentioned Enter-ID, I think. Are you planning to do this with the SCIM provisioning, or you are planning to use permission groups or something like this?
So we were thinking of, at least for Enter-ID with roles and, and groups. But this is really something that, at least for now, we have one use case for one of our customers, at least a blueprint. But that's why I really want to double down on what Julius proposed, that for this to succeed, it really makes sense to just sit down and say, we need to do this. What are the, even if it's a blueprint of this is the way we should have it, even if someone else might want to have a different implementation, at least we're standardized on how to map the information that the identity provider to get mapped. So yes, this is one of the very first steps that we can do to ensure that at least we find an answer altogether. I have an idea in mind, but it's better for all of us to agree to come to the best standard for all.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So, I mean, just maybe to add my thought to it. So for us, usually we have groups in Active Directory, Enter-ID, where we add people and then we want to have them access and have profiles, right? So I think you can technically achieve that through many ways, but that's just from the start to the very end where we want to get to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you for the great session.
Thank you.